Hello everybody. So today we're going to talk about fears. The fears you pack when you go backpacking. My biggest fear, and this is the one we're going to focus on today, is being cold, specifically sleeping cold. I do not like sleeping cold. In fact, when I'm at home here in Canada in the wintertime, I preheat my bed. I have an electric blanket on there and it's a beautiful thing. I'm not going to have that when I go hiking the AT in 2023. Now, to be fair, I'm going in June because I'm going southbound with my husband. So we're not looking at those, February, January temperatures. When you get into some of the altitudes, the temperature can range roughly 10 being the low on average. It can get lower than that. There can be snow in the middle of summer, particularly in the whites. I'm sure we've all seen those pictures of those people going, oh, bad things can happen in the cold. So I don't want to be one of those people. So for me, I've got a system set up that I've practiced here in Canada in temperatures about 10 degrees, and I was very comfortable. I was quite toasty, so I know that this system works for me. It may be overkill for a lot of other people, but for those who are your cold sleepers and want to know how other people do it, this is how I do it. So I'm gonna get into it, and we'll go over how I set my system up. As a little side note, if you watched any of our videos before, you've heard me mention I have something called Raynauds. Raynauds is a symptom, or syndrome I should say, that affects your peripheral circulation, so particularly your fingers and your toes, sometimes your nose and your ears and other things that protrude, but for me it's mostly my fingers and toes. What happens to me when I get exposed to the cold, they will turn numb, so they will turn white. And it takes, when I'm at home, I put them under hot water, and about 10-15 minutes or so, they'll start to thaw and they'll turn purple and red, and it's quite entertaining. And then I get the feeling back in them, and that's great. In the woods, that's not going to happen, so I'm going to have to make sure that, I keep my circulation going, finding ways to heat when necessary. The biggest sort of problems I will have if I can't get, or if I let my circulation not regain its full circulation for time, is that I'm going to have a higher risk of getting frostbite, even though it may not seem that cold. It takes a lot more for my body to heat itself up, including the core, if I have no circulation in my periphery. Delayed wound healing, particularly with toes, I find, because we're walking 2,200 miles approximately. If you get blisters or sores on your feet, you need circulation to help you heal. And if you're not getting that circulation, it's going to take a long time, and then you can get some really nasty stuff setting in. So we don't want that. This is my system to help me mitigate that, and I'll give you some tips at the very end, if you want to watch to then, free tips at the end that require no gear to help you sleep warm. But so that's that part of it. So this is part of the reason I have this fear of being cold. So without further ado, let's get into my sleep system. Now, on a note, this is not the lightest sleep system in the world. I'd like to say that it was, it is not. But for me, it's the most comfortable. So on average, my whole sleep system, if I include a liner and a pillow, is about 4 pounds, so it's about a third of my base weight. I don't know if that's heavy or low for some people, but it works for me. Step one of part one of my cold sleeping system is I use this little guy, the Gossamer Gear eighth of an inch closed cell foam pad. Now, this little guy doesn't really add much warmth. It has a couple of other purposes. Its first purpose is it's my sit pad. It's my yoga mat after hiking. I like to stretch. My 50-year-old joints need a little more love and attention. As well as I use it to put under my sleeping pad. My inflatable sleeping pad, I'm always concerned, as I'm sure everyone is, about popping it or getting holes in it. So I want to make sure that the surface underneath it is protected, so I put this under it, because not all surfaces are going to be nice, flat, and even. As much as we'd love them to be, they're not going to be. Because it's underneath there and it's a bit grippy, it helps to hold my sleeping pad in place. We sleep in the Z-Packs triplex, so that does tend to be a little slippery on the surface. If you've ever slept in one or have one, you know that. And because I'm sleeping with a 6'2" man, my space is a little smaller than his, to be fair. I understand that. I'm smaller. But it keeps my pad from sliding over into his and then pushing him out into the tent and then having all the water drain on us. This is important, particularly when the ground is not flat, which is, I think, about 99% of the time. I hope to be proven wrong on the AT. I'm not holding my breath. So, step 1, use the gossamer gear, 1/8 of an inch pad. So this goes down first. So that little guy is down. Spread that out. I use the Rapide, I'm not sure, big Agnes Rapide SL. These were new this year, I guess. This is the petite version. I'm short, so they have a petite, which is lovely. So it's for people under 5'6", I believe, which is nice because usually you're stuck with the regular, a long or a short. And the short tends to cut you off at about your knees, being quite short because it's just for your core. I lose a lot of heat in my feet, and my feet are the coldest, so I want them to be elevated off the ground. I tried doing the short pads, and I put the backpack underneath the feet, and that's really uncomfortable for me. I don't like it, so I'm not going to do it. So I like this a lot. It is meant for, it has an R value of 4.2. So if you know your R values, the higher the R value, the warmer it'll keep you. 4.2 is roughly for about that 20-degree Fahrenheit area. A little lower, a little warmer. It's marketed as a 3-season. I would choose it into a 3-season that's not an extreme 3-season. In Canada, I wouldn't really push this down to 10 degrees. I mean, I know I can because I've done it, but I do feel a bit of that cold. So if I didn't have a warm sleeping bag and other systems, I would find that this would not be sufficient for me. I have tried other ones. In fact, I have the Thermarest X-Therm, the 6.2 Mac Daddy. This one is a 4-season pad. This one is super duper warm. I do really like this pad, and it is very comfortable. And it's actually even lighter than the Rapide. What I don't like about it is this. It sounds like a chip bag. Which, I mean, if I were sleeping by myself, wouldn't care because I don't notice it when I sleep. Jeff notices it and it drives him mental. But there's also the added benefit of that these are horizontal baffles, which works really well for their insulation system. But I find I fall off the edges. I'm a side rotisserie sleeper, so I flop a lot, and I find I end up with my butt on the ground, and it's cold. That's not what these pads are for. And thirdly, it's a bit of a slippery surface. My sleeping bag is, like most sleeping bags, a nylon, and it just slides right on off. So as much as I love this pad, I'm not going to take it on the AT because unless I'm sleeping on perfectly flat ground, and that would be a wonderful thing every time, that's not going to happen. I know that. I'm realistic, so say goodbye to that one. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention with this puppy is, I don't know if you can see it on the side here, is it's got raised edges. So these are 4.25 inches and the main body is 3.5 inches. So it kind of cradles you. So it kind of keeps me in the middle. Now I'm a narrow person, so I just stuck with the regular 20-inch wide, but they do have a wider version, which I think a lot of people do find more comfortable. But with, of course, that comes an extra added weight penalty to that. So this is what goes down next. A little tip here for those who have these air sleeping bags. Most air sleeping bags now come with a pump sack. And this one is no exception. It does come with one, but it's 4 ounces, which seems just ludicrous to me. But as a cold sleeper, and just in general, you really shouldn't blow these up. This may be controversial. I don't know if I'll get comments about that, but you really shouldn't blow them up with your breath. One, the moisture in your breath will help create mold in your pad. Two, the moisture in your air, the moisture in your breath, when the temperature drops, can suck some of the heat out of you because it'll reduce the inflation of your pad, so there'll be less in there and it'll feel colder because it won't be up to its maximum R value. So I don't recommend using your breath, which is great because most of us are too tired after hiking to want to blow these suckers up. I use the Flex Tail Gear, I don't know if you can see that, pump. It's about 3 ounces. I got it off of Amazon. It has a bunch of different accessories for the end. It's rechargeable USB. It takes no time to blow this puppy up. And yeah, I use it for Jeff and I, and it works beautifully. So that's what I bring. It's 3 ounces. It's my luxury item. I'm bringing it. And there we go. Thirdly, I guess, is my sleeping bag. Now, I know a lot of hikers love their quilts, and I have nothing against quilts. I may eventually try a quilt. I've never tried a quilt up until this point. I have this ridiculous sleeping bag, which I adore. It is probably overkill for the vast majority of people, but I like a quilt. I like a sleeping bag. For the main reason is a sleeping bag or a quilt, it's not meant to warm you up. It's not the thing that's keeping you warm. Your body's keeping you warm. You're creating the heat. It's just holding the heat in. So all that extra loft is just creating a space for that heated air to stay in. So when you rotisserie and it's not completely tucked down, although some people say their quilts are great and they don't get drafts, wonderful. You've clearly mastered it. I probably would not. You let the heat out. You dump all your heat. I don't want to dump my heat. I want to keep as much of it as possible. And again, maybe this is overkill. So this is one of the reasons why I still sleep with a sleeping bag, because I can zip that puppy right up. It has a 2-way zipper, so if I do need to dump ever, I don't ever see this happening, but if I do need to dump heat out at my feet, I can open it up at the bottom. That's great. I don't foresee that happening. So what I have here is a Western Mountaineering Versalite. This is made in the US. This little puppy is not a cheap sleeping bag. In fact, this is one of my biggest investment pieces, but I plan to have it forever at this point. I probably will, give it as an inheritance at this point. But it is a comfort level of 10 degrees, and I found I am comfortable at 10 degrees. There is usually a comfort level, a limit level, and an extreme level. That extreme level on ratings of sleeping bags, and none of this is standardized, so it's pretty subjective. That extreme level is you won't die in it. You're not going to be comfortable, but you're not going to die. Your limit is kind of that you're not comfortable either, but you'll do fine over the night. You won't be shivering. You won't be in that fetal position. Comfort level is sleeping regularly. So if 10 is my comfort level, 20 is the average of what I expect the nights to get down to, 10 being not too often, but the extreme that it could. You tend to want to minus 10 degrees off of where you think you're going to be sleeping so that you have some play in there. So 10 degrees is where I've settled at, and so that's what I'm doing. Now this thing has a 850 loft down. It's been treated so that it has the ability to manage moisture, as well as it can handle getting slightly wet without completely soaking through, because as we know, when down gets wet, it's useless. And that is a concern, especially on the AT being so wet. And I know that, but I love down. It's lighter. This is, I think, 958 grams. It's a regular size. I did want to get the short one, but I couldn't find it, which is unfortunate because it is a little long for me, but oh well, it is what it is. The nice thing about this particular sleeping bag is it's got massive, massive baffles on the zipper, so you don't lose the heat at the zipper, and it's got this no snag thing. I don't know if you can see that. Because sleeping bags are notorious for snagging, especially if you have to go to pee in the middle of the night. That's when they're gonna snag. So it doesn't snag on me. It's got a little hoodie here, so if it does get cold, oh, it's beautiful. I love it. And a massive draft collar. It cinches up really tight, so I can pretend I have no head and look like a little caterpillar. It is a lovely, lovely sleeping bag. One of the really big benefits to the sleeping bag is Sleeping bags usually come with horizontal or vertical baffles, and there's a reasoning for behind all of those. This one has continuous horizontal baffles, which means there's no seam that stops it. So if it is really cold, and this is the benefit of quilters, because when you sleep, when you're pushing up against here, this has no value. I mean, you're not going to get any heat retention through there. It's going to go straight through. So when you sleep on the backside, any of that downfill is pointless. But what you do is you shake it down and you move all the fluff to the front on top. So you are technically sleeping on no fill, and all the extra fill is on you. So you've now created twice as much fill on your body, your top half, so that you do stay warmer. So that is a benefit to that type of sleeping bag. They don't all do that, but the higher quality ones certainly will do that. So that's pretty much it. And I mean, when it gets warmer, and it is going to get warmer, and this is just going to be complete overkill for me, I can open up the zipper and treat it like a quilt. I've contemplated, I do have with me, I'm not sure if I'm going to bring it yet, it's a Sea to Summit Cool Max polyester blend sleeping liner. Part of the reason I've contemplated bringing this is, I mean, yes, it adds extra heat, although I'm not really thinking I'm going to need extra heat at this point. I think I'll be good, but it could double as a summer sleeping bag, and to keep the down cleaner, because I mean, you're hopping into it every night. The oils from your body are going to compress the down. That's why you do need to wash them on occasion. They're not hard to wash. You just have to follow the instructions on how to do that, and not just chuck it in a washing machine, because that would be very bad. Whether I'll wash it on the hike at all is debatable. I guess we'll find out once we're up and going. So if you want to see whether I do or not, subscribe, and you'll catch me making that decision at some point. But this is my sleep system. In addition to that, I have a small pillow, which I'll be using. It's a Sea to Summit Aeros ultralight. Again, this thing weighs, I think, 3 ounces. It's not much. It doesn't have a strap on it, and a lot of people like the strap. I'm a big fan of the strap. I don't have one. What I simply do instead is I just take the t-shirt that I've been hiking in, which may be smelly, but you just kind of wrap it around bag pad, set it in there, and voila, you have a pillow holder, and it doesn't move around on you. So, you know, some people will use their buff. My buff isn't wide enough for this, or you could just get one of the many, I think there's a Trekology one that has a pad around it, and plenty of them do. But that is my cold sleep setup. So I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe that was useful in making any decisions for you. Okay, so you've stayed to the end, and I've got some extra tips for you here. So the free tips I have for you that don't require any extra money. So if you want to stay warm at night, tip number 1, stay hydrated. If you're dehydrated, your blood gets thicker, it takes longer to move around your body, and it takes more to heat you. So if you stay hydrated, you'll have a better chance of staying warm. Tip number 2, eat something. Have a snack before you go to bed. Your body is like a 100-watt light bulb. It needs fuel to keep going. So if you have a snack before bed and you're not hungry, you'll stay warmer over through the night. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, go pee. Takes a lot of energy and a lot of heat to keep your pee warm. There's no need for it. Go get rid of it. Tip number 4, do some jumping jacks. Rev up your body a bit before you go to bed. I know it seems silly to kind of wake yourself up before you go to bed, but you'll thank yourself when you get in and you can heat that sleeping bag or quilt up a lot faster, and then you don't feel so cold. So that's tip number 4. Now, for me specifically, I've got an extra tip for you if you're one of those extreme cold people. I use these little chemical heaters, hot hands. These things are great, so you might as well, if you've got them and it's cold, use them. Don't go, oh, saving them for a rainy day. That's kind of what they're there for. But if you do use them, be warned that these, when they get hot, when they get fully activated, can burn the nylon in your sleeping bag. So you don't want to ruin your investment by not putting these in a pair of socks or a buff or something. just so that they're not directly exposed to your sleeping bag or quilt, because you don't want to ruin that. I tend to bring in, as well as that, a Nalgene bottle. Now these are the, what are these ones? These are not the thick, heavy ones, but they're the kind of the next step down. They're a bit more porous. I think they're the HPDE. They're a little bit lighter. They can absorb flavors. I tend to use them for my electrolyte powders or tablets and that type of thing. But what I like about these is I can put boiling water in them and they won't deform. I don't fill them up fully at night, but about 2/3 full. Squeeze it on nice and tight. I'll put it in a 1-gallon bag if I'm concerned it's going to leak, because I don't want my sleeping bag to be wet, because then it's pointless too. And then I'm in a whole host of troubles. But I'll fill it up, I'll put it in the bag. If I've got some damp clothes, I'll wrap it around there as well, to kind of dry them out through the night. And then I'll plop that in my sleeping bag while I'm getting ready for bed. So it's preheating my bed, so that I don't have to warm up the sleeping bag when I get in it. It warms me up, and then I finally warm up enough to heat it up, and it keeps a good temperature and I stay warm. So that's how an extreme cold sleeper sleeps. This may not work for everyone, and these do come in other sizes. I believe there's a 16-ounce version. This is a 32, so you can get a much smaller one if this seems like a ridiculous amount of weight to carry, although I think it's only, I don't know, a couple ounces. I'll put the amount in below. But so that's what I plan to do. So if you've enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe to watch us do the whole Appalachian Trail. That's the plan anyway. Southbound starting June. I'll be putting up more videos just on tips, some gear reviews for later, and if you have anything specific you want to ask or want to know from a middle-aged cold sleeper, throw it out there in the comments and I'll answer the best I can. All right, thank you.